and welcome to Midnight Readings. Sadly, there was no episode last week, but I did take a look at, or more precisely, I accidentally came across, the premise for this week's episode. And so, I suggest you pick a card, any card. Wearing her signature hat, cape, and winning smile, Trixie shuffled the cards with her magic and rifled through them briefly, before fanning them out in front of her. Pick a card, any card, but don't let Trixie see it, she instructed her young assistant as she dramatically looked away. The filly nodded and slightly adjusted her party hat with a hoof. Her stance was firm, her ears pricked. She was clearly determined to fool the magician. As Trixie slid the cards from hoof to hoof, she waited until the right moment and then struck her hoof in quickly. "Excellent choice," Trixie said, sliding the card forward. It hadn't been really. Card forces were among the first tricks in Trixie's toolbox. Trixie had known before hoof exactly which card she would pick. The 10 of Cups, because she had picked it for her. There really was no choice. Trixie had already made it for her. Magic like hers was all about illusions, such as the illusion of choice and the illusion of control. To help sell the second one, Trixie set the deck down on the table beside her and pulled out a permanent marker from one of her many hiding places. She pulled the cap off with her magic and held it out to the filly's eye level. "Now, just to keep Trixie honest, Trixie wants you to sign your name on the front of your card. Don't let her see it." The filly nodded, wings spread in concentration. She took the offered marker in her mouth, and in her thick scrawl signed her name across the chosen card. "Perfect," Trixie said, fanning the cards to let her slide it back in. Of course, that was an illusion of choice too. She knew exactly where the card had gone. After all, she needed to know its exact position to set up part 2 of the trick. Trixie shuffled the deck. That too was an illusion. With a few false shuffles, she had moved the card to the top of the deck. As she did, she spoke, looking at her audience, and never once needing to look down at her cards. "I bet you didn't know that even Trixie's markers have magic powers, did you?" The filly raised an eyebrow and shook her head. It had looked just like the marker she used in school. "In fact," Trixie lit her horn and lifted a large basin made of clear glass, full of water nearly up to the brim, up onto the table beside her. "Trixie's marker will imbue the card you have chosen with waterproof properties. Your card and only your card will float on the water, like a boat." She held up the deck demonstratively, and with a bit of a flourish with her opposite hoof, dropped it inside. All the cards sank instantly. That wouldn't have been terrible had the cards not instantly begun to dissolve. Trixie gasped. She quickly tried to climb onto the table, rear hoof scrambling desperately for purchase, and when she finally made it up, desperately stuck her hoof in and tried to retrieve the deck. But by the time she'd actually gotten onto the table, all she'd managed to save were a few slimy grey strings, resembling strands of papier-mâché, that stuck to her hoof. Amidst the giggling of the fools and even a few of the adults, Trixie blinked. She set her hoof down with a squelch. "Oops," she said, taking a slight step back and looking briefly from side to side before hopping off the table. And perhaps the most important illusion to sell, the illusion of error. Some errors, though, weren't an illusion. One of Trixie's exaggerated shudders as her eyes flicked across the room, and she shook the gunk off her hoof, was real as memories of the incident with the alicorn amulet sprang to mind, and memories of how badly it had corrupted her. Sure, Twilight had forgiven her, and the good rumours had also spread about her admittedly impressive fireworks display. But after that, she needed to keep a very low profile. This is why she was currently doing her rounds, wasting her vast and expensive talent on fools' birthday parties and cute signoras. Sure, she could have chosen not to, but that would have meant choosing to starve, and Trixie was most certainly not about to choose that. Really, everything was the illusion of choice, and just like the Fillies, Trixie's choice had already been made for her. The Filly looked up with confusion in her eyes. Trixie let it slowly burn there, and when her mouth curved downward, as the first inklings of betrayal crept in, she finished her trick. "Trixie is very sorry that it didn't work," she said, lighting her horn and sliding over one of the sandwiches provided for the party. She held it out. "Perhaps a consolation prize?" she offered, with a shaky smile. The Filly glared at Trixie, but took the sandwich and turned to walk off stage. Still scowling, she bit into it, but found her teeth hit something that definitely wasn't cheese. She frowned and pulled her head back and clenched between her teeth. Her eyes widened. "No way!" She held it up, and sure enough, every pony could see her signature atop the 10 of cups. "My card!" she squealed. Trixie raised a hoof and bowed to a thunderous applause. "The great and powerful Trixie, every pony!" Still, the Filly's eyes lit up like one of Trixie's fireworks. Dropping the card in a sandwich, she darted over and wrapped herself around Trixie's foreleg. "You're the greatest magician ever!" she proclaimed. Sometimes. Her stage facade cracked. Trixie smiled as she bent down and returned the hug. She glanced up to see the Filly's mother standing nearby with the camera. Never one to miss a good photo opportunity, she took off her hat and placed it on the Filly's head and picked her up, turning around to pose for a picture. For a brief moment, captured forever in that flash of light, both wore genuine smiles. It had been the right choice, all along. That was 10 of Cups, written by Batame. Batame? Batame. I think it's Batame. I like this thought that Trixie may have grown from the last time. I haven't watched the episode yet, so I don't know how this story is going to follow along with Trixie's real actions. But it's a nice thought. Trixie would definitely make a good magician. She has her knack for stage. But I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all next week. Stay bright!